Hey guys, welcome back to Black Rock Nissan Off-Road, and today I wanted to talk about a little modification that has been about 6 years in the making for the VQ40, the Frontier, Pathfinder, Xterra. And I meant to do this earlier in the summer, especially as gas prices were raising, but I have posted about this online, and but I just thought, well, it might be this might be a good opportunity to go ahead and do a video about it and just get it out there. So, one thing I wanted to talk about, as I'm talking about modifications, is oftentimes on the forums and in conversations, hear guys say, engineers know what they're doing. If they wanted something done a certain way, they would have done it that way. And, you know, without creating a lot of drama, I say to those people, that's one of the most ridiculous statements I've ever heard, and I'll tell you why. Because no question, engineers are brilliant. They're intelligent, and I'm generalizing that. I don't think that you can get a degree and be employed and maintain employment in those areas if that was otherwise the case. But I think where people who say those things are off track is that they fail to take into consideration that these are not individuals that are working on their own. They are hired within companies. These companies have specific expectations that they want, these criteria, and there's also other teams of engineers that they're having to work with. And so not only are they having to do and design and construct on whatever it is that they're tasked with working on, but they have to keep in mind what other people are doing as well, and they have to look at what is the company, what is their expectations. There are certain parameters. If we're talking about horsepower, for example, no, they're not going to design something that is going to make maximum horsepower. And why is that? Because if they did, then other areas of the vehicle that are being designed would have to be altered. We're talking about transmission, we're talking about drivetrain, we're talking about bearings, we're talking about all sorts of stuff. This is exactly why on some vehicles you have like half-ton axles, three-quarter-ton axles, one-ton axles. Why is that? Well, it's because that vehicle is, the one with the beefier axles is more designed for towing, hauling. That engine's going to have typically more power output. The axles that are what I would call the weaker axles, like the half-ton axles, those are vehicles that have lower horsepower, lower demands, and typically don't get used in the same way. So it's the same kind of concept. You got to look at the vehicle. Certainly, there's also trade-offs like with fuel economy, and that's ultimately where I'm going here. That within those restrictions, EPA guidelines, rules, laws, that these engineers are their hands are tied in a lot of ways with what they have to do and those expectations and cost. Guys, cost is a huge factor here. Certainly, even if something's going to cost the company an extra 50 cents or $1, when you talk about hundreds of thousands of vehicles that are getting produced, that's a huge expense. And certainly when you multiply that across other areas of a vehicle, it's not cost effective to do some of these things. And again, their engineers, maybe even the manufacturers, are not going to be allowed to do certain things because of regulations. Well, that's where, as the owner, we come in and we're allowed to then do certain things, or at least we're not under the microscope in doing those things, unless you live in an area that has emissions testing, and then certainly certain modifications are going to be observed and indicated as not allowing you to re-register that vehicle and keep it on the road. But for those of us who don't have to live in those areas and under those restrictions, then we've got a lot more leeway to do those kinds of things. And the thing I want to talk about specifically today is the air straightener, and certainly the fact that engineers on the VQ40 put an air straightener, and this is located behind the throttle body on the intake plenum, the neck, where the throttle body attaches to the plenum. The purpose of this is to smooth out the airflow that's coming across that throttle body. And so you have the opening of the throttle body. That butterfly is going to be closed at idle and open up, and the air coming across that, especially at partial throttle, is going to be turbulent. And so immediately after that throttle body, you've got that straightener to help ensure that the air coming into the intake is flowing efficiently. So when looking at modifying my engine, I talked to Pre-Drag at Performance about some of the power modifications that he offered, and he has made an adapter kit to allow installation of an LS 90mm throttle body, and it does require tune, but I was moving in that direction. I knew I wanted to get up rev tuned, and did. And so I wasn't really sure early on if that butterfly on the 90mm throttle body was going to clear the factory air straightener. So preemptively, I went ahead and gutted that. I cut all the fins off of that air straightener, but left the outer diameter because that's what secures the gasket for the throttle body. So all this time, I want you to understand, I have taken fuel economy readings and monitored that from day one. And at this point, I'm very familiar with how the vehicle drives stuff. I've had it for a while, so I know how it drives and feels with the factory air straightener. I gutted it. Now I'm learning how it feels without that. Those fins on there. I installed the LS 90mm throttle body, have it tuned. Now I'm getting familiar with how that operates. And in the course of all this, I'm recognizing that the butterfly would actually clear, and I'm thinking that I'm recognizing, I know that that straightener is there for a purpose, and now I'm looking at options about how to do that. What I did was I went to MRP, check them out. They make some really nice equipment and components for intakes, especially when you're doing custom builds and stuff like that. And one of their offerings is a Honeycomb Air Straightener, aluminum air straightener, in various diameters and in various cell sizes. Cell size I'm referring to are the holes that of each individual honeycomb. And so I wanted to get the largest cell size that they offered, and I believe that was 6mm if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that, check it out. I think 5 is the smaller, but so I got the larger cell size, and I got, if I remember correctly, a 3.5 inch, because I think the diameter of the factory air straightener is somewhere about 3 inches. And those honeycombs are cut when you ask for like a 3-inch, it's cut for a 3-inch intake, so it's actually cut a little smaller than that. So initially when I ordered the 3, it didn't fit. I had to go 3.5 and trim that down. That's fine. It's very thin aluminum, so it trimmed very easily. And then I took some stainless steel jewelry rings and opened those up, drilled small holes in the diameter of that housing, and put those rings in there, clamped them down. So effectively they're kind of like staples or rivets, however you want to think about it. So now it's not just like glue or anything holding these aluminum components in place to the plastic housing. These are indeed anchored down by rivets and secured by at least, I try to make sure there's at least 3 mounting points within there, evenly distributed. And then any point that of the metal fins that makes contact with the plastic, I make sure that I do some really thin glue. And of course, I'm trying to minimize any kind of intrusion into the intake path so that the airflow is as smooth as possible. And some of that, because of how thick those straighteners are, has to hang off the backside. And part of why I'm going through this and I want you to know this information is because I don't know anybody who makes these other than myself, but I'm certainly not a business. So I'm not advertising. I'm not trying to say, hey, come buy something that I'm making. I'm putting this information out there because I want you to have it and understand at least how I've done it. And you can do it a different way. Maybe you got a better way. How you can do that on your own. It's not really expensive. I think you can get just one of those pieces from MRP for, if I remember correctly, maybe around $30 shipped. Maybe it's 35, and then you take your own factory straightener, gut it, clean it up, you drill your own holes, install it, trim it down, and make it fit. You can do that on your own, especially if you've got the tools and everything. And I encourage people to do that. I'm just trying to get the information out there. But so why though? Why do I want that information out there? Is because what I discovered was, I was really excited about, and in sharing this on the forums, letting people know that, one of the first things was there was some whistle, and I like it, but there is a whistle, so there is a slight noise at partial throttle. But I also noticed that traveling on the interstate at partial throttle, there was a boost in the low end power. But what surprised me the most, I noticed a change in my fuel economy. It went from getting around 15. I started looking at numbers closer to 17 and a half, 18 miles per gallon. And this is instantaneous. Next tank after, the next one. I'm consistently seeing 1.5, 2 mile per gallon increases. Same driving habits, same pattern, everything, of course. So that was the big surprise here, and nothing expected. So I really wanted to test this out. And when you test anything, that's what you do. You do a thorough job. You get the numbers. So I'm recording the numbers. I'm documenting what my travels are, if I'm doing interstate, around town, whatever. So if I'm looking at lower fuel economy, is it because I've changed something in my driving habits? And it was. I also wanted to see, given I had modifications, and certainly at this point in time, I'm tuned. And so the question that I also kind of wanted to make sure of here, of course, the change in fuel economy was associated with the single installation of this after I was already tuned. So I already had numbers from my tune, right? I wanted to see if I could reproduce this on other vehicles. So I talked with some guys on the forum. I got a couple of buddies here locally who have Frontiers, Xterra, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna build extra of these. I'm gonna go ahead and order the parts and put them on. And ultimately, here's the facts. Just simply by putting in that aluminum modified air straightener, for guys who do primarily highway interstate driving, who drive longer distances between stops, they saw that 1.5, 2 mile per gallon increase. For guys who towed, I got one buddy who does mowing, towed a trailer very consistently, but also did a lot of highway mileage. His gains was closer to about 1 mile per gallon, and that was with the towing. When he wasn't towing, at times, he'd go through periods where he wasn't hauling his trailer and everything. He saw closer to 1.5, 2 miles per gallon with that. Now he was stock. Guys that had larger tires, heavier weight, typically other modifications. Modifications didn't seem like it really made a difference, but the bigger tires and more weight, guys that had work vehicles or just towed, hauled a lot, those tended to see lower gains, closer to about 0.5 to 1 mile per gallon. There was one individual who did a lot of like short trips to and from work and more in the city. He really didn't see anything but at best maybe a 0.5 mile per gallon improvement. So my point is here, guys, is in doing this, don't just do this because, I'm going to automatically get 2 miles per gallon. That's not how this works. So full disclosure here, this is look at how you drive. If you do mostly interstate driving, long drives, then this modification is absolutely going to be great for you. If you do mostly city driving, short, 5-10 minute trips, have larger tires, are or this is a work vehicle, this is not going to benefit you. And so let's talk about, cost, because some modifications are hundreds of dollars. The great thing about this, especially if you do it yourself, out of pocket is you're going to be less than $50. So how long does that take to pay off at 1 mile per gallon, 2 mile per gallon? Well, it might still take a while, but especially with fuel costs the way they are, over the long term, you get that in, then and installed, you're going to be pretty much set. But it's up for you to make that call. I'm not recommending this for the power at partial throttle, interstate driving. I don't think that's where this mod really shines. It's when with fuel economy, when traveling and stuff. So I'm going to walk you through. I've got a video that demonstrates how to remove your factory unit and how to put it back in. I'm not going to do a video about how to do the modification. You can look at the pictures, and I've described it, where you cut out the old fins. You can use a Dremel to then smooth everything out, making the inside of that housing just smooth and really nice. And that's what I do. And I'll usually polish it and clean it up, use very fine sandpaper, and then again I hold the aluminum up to the housing and start trimming and make sure that it'll fit in there. It will have to sit recessed a little bit. Make sure that you look at the pictures, and you'll need to trim the outer edge because the inside of the intake neck does reduce in diameter a little bit as it goes in. So you'll need to trim it at an angle, whatever sticks out the back, to make sure that it fits inside of there. And again, you can see that in the pictures, but do that yourself. Avoid a lot of the cost. So if anybody wants me to make one, I'll do that, but that's not what this is about. This is really about sharing knowledge, benefiting the community, letting people know that this is something very affordable that they can do to improve fuel economy. In fact, the majority of individuals that I've built one for and had test have asked to keep them. To me, that says a lot as well. Where I've only had one person be like, "Well, I didn't really feel a difference." He was one that off-roaded and had larger tires, and he returned it, and that's fine. It was just a test, So this wasn't anything that anybody even had paid for. I just said, "Hey, your vehicle's a little bit different. The way you use it's a little bit different," and that's what I wanted to evaluate and test for, is to not get people that all use their trucks the same, so that I could come to you and say, "Hey, yeah, everybody saw these gains." I think that's misleading and dishonest, and that doesn't help the community. And so this was looking at knowing that the trucks get used in a wide variety of ways. How can I try to capture that for as many people as possible? And I think that's what's been done here. Just throwing that out there for the naysayers. It's not just one vehicle, it's multiple vehicles. And so to me, I think it's something that is validated. Otherwise, I wouldn't bring it to the community's attention. So get out there, build one. If you have any questions or comments about this, post them below. I'll definitely respond to that. So get out there, guys, and have fun with your trucks, with your families. Take care. So this is replacing the air straightener and the throttle body. So we got to take out the 2 bolts here. Engine cover comes off. Got to replace, remove the bolts. PCV hose. Loosen screws. Remove the intake. And then that gives you access to the throttle body. Go ahead and remove the plug, and then you've got 4 Allen head bolts here, and so you're going to use an appropriately sized. Make sure that it fits in there good and tight and snug. If it doesn't, check and see if you've got another one, because I know you don't want to strip these. I've had people strip them. So if it looks too loose, then see, that was way too loose. So this will be the one we're going to use.
Standard or metric?
This one, it says it's rubbed off. So it says it's a 5.
All right, so that's metric.
I always just crack these loose. And once they're loose, they come out pretty easy. You do not need to replace or remove the coolant lines. They're going to be fine. Just need to watch as these are loosening up. Don't let the throttle body fall. That's usually not a problem, but just something to be mindful of. And this is going to give us direct access to the straightener. Now, there is a gasket here, depending on the age of your vehicle. If you want to replace that, that might be a good idea. This is a newer truck, so you're just going to grab that up top, pull it out. It's fine. I suggest usually just wiping it clean, and that's good. Now, this is going to be your air straightener. This is the factory unit, and it's usually just as easy as this. Put your 2 fingers under here, and then slide a screwdriver or something in here, and then just easily pry it out. And then pull it, and it's going to pop out. The reason why I pull it from the top is because it's got this little clip here that goes in the bottom, and once you pry out the top, that clip automatically comes up out of that slot, and then you can pull it out. Certainly, when you put the modified unit back in, you just want to line up that clip. There's also this little space here that's going to line up with that gap there. You're going to put this in. You can hear it click in place. Once that's clicked in place, you're going to start with the top here with your gasket, and then you're going to feed it around. Once that's done, you're going to reassemble your throttle body just like so. Put everything back together, tighten it up. And it's as simple as that. So again, just to demonstrate removing that again, you can take a screwdriver or whatever, stick it in about 1 o'clock position, put your fingers here to kind of help support, and you're pulling out with your fingers as you are with that, pops right out. There you go.